Good evening, everyone. I am Shatarupa Mishra, a teacher of English at Model Degree College, Deoghar, Odisha. I welcome you all to the launch of this online book club named the Malgudi Group. At first, I wish all of you a happy 77th Independence Day. It's true that this day requires introspection about the state of affairs as it is and as it ought to be. But this introspection need not rob us of our gratefulness at having freed ourselves from British rule 76 years ago. So I wish you a happy Independence Day again. Let me tell you a little about the thoughts behind starting this book club. One of my university friends asked me about an online reading group which she could participate in. I knew about book clubs where people met physically to discuss books, but I did not know of many online reading groups. So I shared this with my friend Arpita Datta, whom I had met virtually through an academic forum that we both were members of. Thankfully, both of us thought that it was possible to begin an online reading group, with our efforts put together. It didn't take us long to zero in on a name for our group. R.K. Narayan being a common favorite, we decided to call ourselves the Malgudi Group. Then our friend Bhavya joined us, and she too confirmed that she was a fond reader of the creator of Malgudi. The name inspired us collectively, and here we are with our first session. I must make it clear that this initiative focuses on Indian English writing and Indian writings in English translation. We hope that this will particularly benefit those who are interested in the field of Indian writing in English and in general those who look upon themselves as readers of literature. Friends, the first book that we have taken up for discussion is Geetanjali Shree's Ret Samadhi, translated into English as Tomb of Sand by Daisy Rockwell. As you must be knowing, the translation received the International Booker Prize recently, which the International Booker Prize since 2016 has been given annually to a book translated into English and published in the United Kingdom or Ireland. So we will be talking about this book in 3 parts, as it is a very intensely philosophical book, and we decided that we could not possibly handle it in one session. So we decided to talk about it in 3 parts. Part 1, Mars Back, will be discussed today. Part 2, Sunlight, will be taken up on the 22nd. And Part 3, Back to the Front, will be dealt with on 29th August. There's a disclaimer. We do not know how this journey is going to unfold, and we have decided to let the story tell itself. Also, we do not claim to deal with the novel extensively. We will share with you our responses to this writing, to the way the novel develops. And I hope they will be enough to encourage you to read the book and come up with your own interpretations. So here we go. I now request Arpita and Bhavya to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their thoughts regarding this group. Yes, Arpita, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Shatarupa and Bhavya. I teach independently French, English, and political science, and I am an independent researcher. I'm very happy to be part of this group because I love to read. And reading is something which helps me to regain my energy after an exhausted journey of the entire day. So, apart from being, reading being a window for me for the world to see the world, it's something like my alter ego. I can't live without reading. I can't survive without reading. So you can say that it's like a sleeping pill for me, and it's at the same time how to say a vitamin, like a vitamin D, which provides us energy. So it's a vitamin and a tranquilizer, both at the same time. Now, as Shatarupa was telling, uh, we are not discussing this book really very intensively. We have decided, at least for the first part, that we will try to express our point of view the way we have interpreted. Uh, somewhere, certain chapters, or maybe we are interpreting, a personality, a person, the way he or she is behaving, or perhaps we are trying to look at, the translated version and comparing it with the original Hindi version. How is the journey of translation? So I would request on behalf of the group members that those who will listen to our this discussion, the recording, if you could share your opinion or your point of view regarding this book, or whatever you have felt, any personality or any chapter or any metaphor which have attracted your interest. So you can always share whatever you have felt through our email ID, which is there in the description box on our YouTube channel, and you can also share via the comment section. So that's all from my side as introductory part. Now I request Bhavya to introduce herself.
Um, Good evening, Shatrupa ma'am, and good evening, Arpita Didi. I am going to take the liberty of being very personal with Arpita Didi because I've known her for almost a decade now. So even if this piece goes public, I would still want to retain the personal touch that I have with her. First of all, thank you so much for the greetings of the Independence Day. I wish everybody else independence of mind, body, and spirit, and not just a name. I am very, very grateful that these two people could even think of an idea of an online reading club, because, as Shatrupa ma'am had stated, there are a lot of platforms where you can go and physically read books, discuss books. I'm sure that every city has one or two options like these, but we also have to be slightly practical and understand that most of us are working professionals and most of us have a very, very tight schedule. So something which is supposed to be giving sustenance to you, like Didi has just mentioned, reading is like vitamin D, it's like sunlight to all of us. That should also come to the comfort of our homes, if not uh, if you don't consider it a post COVID thing. So I'm very grateful that these two individuals have taken the initiative to um, initiate a club online. The book, Tomb of Sand, written by Geetanjali, Shree, and translated by Daisy Rockwell, is what we are going to be discussing in the first three sessions of the club. It's a huge book. It's a huge book, not just in terms of quantity, but also quality. Um, I think uh, the book, it's going to be very pompous of me to say this, but the book deserves every honor and every appreciation that has been bestowed upon it since its launch, and since it has received the Booker Prize. I distinctly remember that this year in 2023, I had gone for the Jaipur Literature Festival, and there I had attended by Geetanjali Shree, and they were basically talking about the um, relevance of the various kinds of Hindi languages that we speak of today, since the novel has originally been written in the Hindi language. And apart from the discussion, which is of course freely available on the JLF YouTube channel as well, the amount of people who had gathered there just to listen to her speak, I think speaks not just of the gravity of the book, but the gravity of the author itself. Sometimes, in the passion for appreciating a book and the content, we literally forget the face behind it and the person who has the ability to create something as novel as this, both in the literal and the metaphoric sense. So if that individual is composing something as beautiful as this, we can only imagine how beautiful that individual might be and how wise that individual might be. So I think I don't know much of Geetanjali Shree, and for the purpose of this session, I've also not explored her as an author. But I could see the wisdom that she must have had throughout the years of writing being translated into this work. Um, Keeping that aside, I am a professor of English. I teach English, but I would prefer to call myself a student of literature for the rest of the years that I live. There is no better joy in reading and in understanding literature uh, um, that I have known. And like most of the people who would be listening to us, they would agree that when you read, you go into a trance like state. And this book, eventually, in the very first part itself, talks about what a meditative, a trance like state, a samadhi is. So I think it's a very close semblance that we will be experiencing, justifying the title of the book itself. And if anything is not left, we can start with Arpita Didi's presentation. Should we?
Oh, she is saying Arpita Didi, Shatarupa will start.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so
So
sorry.
that's fine. Arpita Didi can also start. That's fine because you see, I mean, we can go on in any order, any particular way is not fixed. So please,
No, I
Arpita,
think,
since you
ma'am,
have a PowerPoint presentation also to all our audience, I would really want to look at your presentation. I'm intrigued and I want to see it. So if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead. I'll also see, I have to allow you to present the screen also. So try, see if you can present the screen, and please go ahead with your presentation. I'll follow you. Okay.
The only thing is, just prior to the recording of this video, Shatarupa and I were discussing about how to begin at the beginning while discussing about a novel. So then I told her that we can start from any point. So see now that this is the execution of that beginning of the beginning. We thought that Shatarupa will start, then me, and then Bhavya. So now the chronology has changed. So you have made me host.
Yes, just see, I think you are the co-host now.
Am I? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. But it's not showing the full screen share now. Just a second. Is it visible? All the like this one you can see.
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Second one. Acha, okay. So let me start with. Acha, should I go with this slideshow option or this is fine for you?
Whichever
Yes.
one you prefer.
Yeah, you can go with the slideshow thing. It'll be better, I think.
Just check once. Is it better?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So
Yes.
then, okay. So since we thought that we'll start our discussion with the first part of this novel, Tomb of Sand. So I have tried to prepare a PPT, although I can't, restrict such a voluminous concept within the limit of 4 or 5 PPTs. I just thought that all those informations I will tend to forget. So it's also because so that I can also see the pointers. I have prepared this PPT. So first I tried to discover till now what we have read in the part one. But what's partition? Since we know that this is a book based on partition, and we often end up thinking that partition is a geographical partition between two countries, creating a border between two countries. Partition creates situations where we are not able to cross the border. I mean, the way we used to, cross a lane before partition. So, throughout the first part of this novel, I have discovered certain sort of examples of partition through metaphors, like geographical partition, psychological partition, like international boundaries between two countries. Here they have mentioned India and Pakistan. International boundaries also. Partition can happen among the family members within a family. And here, if we analyze the characters, it seems that the author has intentionally or unintentionally tried to expose the gap or the partition between the soul or our inner self and the outer self. That is the way we think we would love to do certain things, and the way and the manner through which the society influences us to execute those desires or to attain those goals. That's also something Geetanjali Shree has very skillfully, artistically has depicted in this first part of this novel. Now, when I talk about different symbols of partition, in this novel we have found wall as as a kind of partition, door at the entrance from one section of the room to the other section of the room, the room within a house, and the sea. For example, in this novel, we have seen that there's a person whose name we don't know, we haven't discovered yet. The author has termed him as the overseas son or the serious son. I'm very fond of him, although. So the sea has created, a separation between the family which is staying in India and the serious boy who has crossed the sea to reach his destination where he will start working. And finally, the inability or the ability to do something. For example, I'm just giving you the example from a book, from this book. The author herself has stated that if we say that I am able to, cook healthy dishes, so that's the ability of a person. And if someone is cooking a healthy dish, but according to the other family members, it's not healthy, then it's considered as a partition between these two personalities. For example, the Bahu and her husband. Or for example, in this novel, we have seen the partition between Bahu and Beti. The partition between Ma, that is the aged person, who is, whose daughter-in-law is this Bahu, and the rest of the family. And finally, partition between the eldest son of Bahu, who is known as Sid or Siddharth, and the serious son or the overseas son, who is the youngest son. So these are the symbols of partition and the types of partition which we can see overall in the first chapter, first part. Okay, although Geetanjali Shree has mentioned that his son, I mean the serious son, has played a role of a cameo in this part one. She hasn't yet mentioned his name. Maybe we will know his name later in the second part. Now, I'm very fond of this serious son. I don't know why. I mean, that's the beauty of this novel, perhaps, that there are certain areas which attract us a lot, but we don't know which word, how verbally we could express our feelings that, okay, this is the exact reason for which I like this section, or this is the exact reason for which I like the way a single word has been explicitly elaborated and described in the chapter. For example, the serious son. Who would have known that with this simple expression of serious son or like overseas son, an entire chapter can be written? I didn't imagine. And the first page when I read, I thought, serious son. So what's this? Where is the name of the son? I in fact, went through 4 or 5 pages to just to discover that person's name, and I couldn't find a name. And it gave me a feeling of uneasiness that I couldn't discover the name of the person, whereas a whole chapter is being written on this person, his likes and dislikes, his ability and inability to do certain things the way the society is expecting to get from him. So, see, here in this chapter, there's a particular chapter, chapter 18 to 20, chapter 20, I believe, where Geetanjali Shree has actually mentioned certain characteristics of Siddharth or Sid and his younger brother, who is the serious son, to point out or to focus on the difference of their personalities, which are creating not only the partition between these two people, brothers, but also a partition within the serious son. What's that? Serious son used to hate smile. I'm quoting this word. Used to hate smile And this became his weakness and the reason of his trauma at a certain point of time. Because when he was abroad, he was after his office work, he was taking a rest on a beach, and there he went to a restaurant, and a kid came near him, and he asked the serious son to smile or to laugh. He didn't like the kid. He actually didn't like any kid. And he found that why he should laugh. And the kid slapped him second time to, ask him to laugh. He became very irritated and he started shouting at him. And the people who were present in that restaurant were very surprised and agitated that since a kid's demand, even a kid's demand, he can fulfill. And where's the harm to smile or to laugh? So it created at some point of time the question or the doubt within himself that, oh, I can't laugh. These are all the sentences from the text, from the novel itself. Oh, I can't laugh. What's the hell? Oh shit. The author has used this expression. Oh shit, I can't laugh. And in the dream, when he woke up, the dream itself is telling him as if, oh, can't you laugh, dear? And then the smile, the laugh itself is as if telling the serious son that, dude, can't you laugh? So everyone is mocking at him because he is unable to smile or unable to laugh. Even the dog, whose name is, Julius Caesar, there's a spelling mistake. Julius Caesar, the name which the mysterious son didn't like, he is also laughing at him and indicating that, oh, sir, you can't even laugh. See, the aged people are also laughing, smiling. Why are you so serious? He is serious, according to the novel, because he is finding the life from tough to tougher to toughest. He is on the mode of disliking the way people dress, people react, and people he dislikes his brother's sit because he is rowdy. He is always happy. He uses gestures. He is very easy to go with his friends, and he thinks that these are all wastage of time. He is not labor. He is not very industrious. Whereas the society thinks that he can't mingle up with them, and that's his inability. So the ability of this person, the society, to to identify him as someone who is unable to laugh, and the inability of this serious son to discover, despite his several trial to laugh, that he can't laugh, becomes a kind of disease and a kind of trauma and creates partition, which actually I find very relevant because it's a kind of partition which has been created and which is being created even in today's society. So this is one of the reasons which has inspired me to focus on this serious person. Although he has finally been able to get a better job, which has also been mentioned in the novel. But I would always say he is one of the personalities, or personalities who is very much visible around us in our neighborhood, or who knows, we ourselves can find at certain point of time, just like in the situation that has been faced by this serious son. So This is one of the discoveries that I would always cherish from the first part of the novel written by Geetanjali, Tomb of Sand. Thank you. I should stop.
Yes, so that was wonderful and interesting. First, I must say thank you for preparing this PPT because it was colorful and it complements the cover of the book, I would say. Because you see, the cover of the book, I find it very aesthetic because it has pastel colors and, those. I mean, just looking at the cover would want you to take up a brush and use those colors and go on adding to the painting, especially the figure of the lady whom we meet so clearly in the first part and who awes us with her persistent efforts to become one with the wall and turn her back upon everyone else, and who has practiced the art of falling backwards with the sun, looking at the sky even while being shot at. So it was really very interesting. So should I go ahead with whatever I had in mind regarding the first part?
Sure.
So I think after we share our thoughts, we can all come back and have a I mean, we can put together our thoughts and just see where all our thoughts lead us. So I would like to leave the word part out of part one. Just before we began this discussion, I was telling Arpita that I was more at home with poetry. If I had to choose between a novel and a poem, I always would move towards a poem. But I did not have that choice with this book, or I was not, I did not have to face this decision of whether to move this side or that side, because I found that poetry was inherent in the way these descriptions were given. Poetry was there from the very beginning of the first section of the first part, and that's why I said I would like to leave out the word part, because I would want to come back to it and just focus on one, which means the first section of the first part, which begins with the sentence, "A tale tells itself." I just stopped at that line. Just like, in a poem, there is a particular phrase or a particular turn of thought where you just stop. So when I first started reading this novel, I just stopped at the first sentence. Before I could go further, I did not know how to leave this first sentence and move forward, to be honest. Because, now I have moved forward, though I have not finished reading the novel, I must say it. And that is also key to what I am going to say. A tale tells itself. Now, when I come to this sentence, I find that in this one sentence, there is agency, there is self-reflexivity, there is alliteration, as you find in a poem, there is movement, there is imagination, there is truth, there is beginning, there is end. there is totality and there are fragments. All this in just one line. No wonder the key is in the telling, as Bhavya was referring to the way the author has chosen to tell the tale. The key is in the telling, and it is also in the listening, how we listen to what has been said. Now, in that first section, there is a kind of summary of the whole story. It is said that the story consists of two women, border and death. Just these three words that struck me. Two women, one growing smaller and the other growing bigger. One happy that she was growing smaller, the other sad, at the fact that she was growing bigger. And then there is the border and death. Now, as Arpita pointed out very rightly in her presentation, this book is a partition novel. If we have that category in mind, then of course this book belongs to that tradition, as has been clearly mentioned in a comment on the cover of the book itself, that it is a kind of partition novel, but it's very different from the usual. That is what the comment says. Now, in partition stories, usually we will see that there are traumatic deaths of people in Bengal and Punjab. Then the inhumane treatment of women, particularly belonging to both religions. Pain and dislocation marking refugee camps on both sides of the border. So from these words, women, border, and death, we can just see that there is a connection, an overt connection to the tradition of partition stories, partition novels. Now, what makes it different, I believe, is the way that it communicates silences between those stories which were already written. So I would say that this particular attempt is also a kind of research work. I would say that it is also about finding a gap, what we usually do in research, find a gap. So somehow that gap has been located and it is communicated to us, and the manner of communication is poetic. Because I believe that whenever someone says that silence has been communicated, I believe that that kind of communication is poetic communication. I feel that way. So I would just like to read out one or two lines from the third section of the first part. Words. But what are words really? They are mere sounds with meanings dangling from them. They have no logic. They find their own way. So if words find their own way, there is significance in a tale telling itself. And we are part of that telling. We are part of those words that are struggling to find their own way. So somehow, when we open this book and we try to read it, we are participating in the warp and weft of whatever is being woven here. Now, I would like to stress on the word fragment, because you see, I have just been talking about this one section. I've not attempted to talk about part one as if it is a whole, and that is why I left the word part out, because if you use the word part, it means you have a whole in mind, a whole, entity in mind, and you see this particular section as part of that whole. But now I don't want to have any whole in mind. WHOLE, that whole. But if you tell me HOLE, I would agree with it. Okay, there is a whole. I want to explore that whole. There is just this whole, and I don't know what it is connected to. So I want to consider how this narrative is fragmented. It is fragmentary. From the way I read it, if you try to make sense of it, and that is what actually put me through anxiety. When I tried to, find out a thread that I could trace, I couldn't. So there was some anxiety, and I felt as if, I'm not quite up to the mark, and perhaps either it is too easy or it is too difficult. I don't know the middle area where I should be. Usually when we are in a classroom and we talk to students, we assume that we know a particular work well, and we can tell it in such a way that the students will also understand our points of view, and they will develop their points of view. So we assume that kind of a vantage point. But here, I must confess that I could not find out any vantage point. I was afraid of the thought that perhaps someday I would have to teach this novel to my students, and then what would happen? Then what would I do? So that was the first thought that came to my mind. I would just want to concentrate on the nature of a fragment as we understand the fragment. See, when we read literature, or when we explore theory, we talk of fragmentation. When we talk about postmodern literature, that is the most common thing that we explore or discuss. But I want to focus on the difference between a piece and a fragment. A piece and a fragment. Suppose, one of our flower vases, it falls and breaks. We have all the pieces. We are able to find all the pieces, and we are able to put those pieces together. So they are pieces then. They are not fragments. They are pieces, and they can fit in with each other. They can be put together. But if some of those pieces are lost forever, some of those pieces are not there, then those pieces will turn into fragments. And I had read something like this in a beautiful book about fragments. I don't remember, where I read it, but I read it. And it had really struck me. It has remained with me. So if something is lost, then we have fragments. If there is loss, then we have fragments. Otherwise, there is a possibility that they are just pieces and they can be put together to bring back that whole. But with fragments, there is no expectation of the whole. And there are things we can do with fragments. And that is why there is that kind of agency, the agency with which the novel begins, that it is telling itself. And we are also part of that telling. So I will just, point out in the fourth section of the first part, there is this image of a tree, and I find that imagery very beautiful, very beautiful. Comparing the old lady with a tree and trying to explain why she wants to, turn her back on the others in her family. A tree grew, took root, But tired of the circling shadows of familiar faces, of the embrace of leaves of familiar fragrances, of the chirping on the branches, of the same old vibrations. And so it came to be that the tree felt stifled and murmured, no, no. But there is wind and rain and the puff of no that flies up between them and takes the form of a snippet, a scrap that flutters and flaps and flitters and swirls about the branch into a ribbon of desire that wind and rain unite to bind there. And it goes on. And the following exploration of the different versions of no is also very fascinating. It's a play with words, and it's also a play with how we would read the lady's posture, the lady's turning her back on the world. But I want to concentrate on these two words, a snippet and a scrap. Both these words, they are different words for a fragment, right? A snippet or a scrap. So, when she was just saying no, no, we understood no as a no, right? We understood no as a no, and we understood that she does not want to engage with her family anymore, and rather she wants to recede into the wall. She wants to become one with the wall. Whether she wants it or whether the wall has another kind of agency, that is an angle to explore. But, we are certain that no means no. But when, that no, it flies up between the wind and rain and becomes a fragment. It becomes a snippet. It is taken out of that context, and it is part of something larger, something, we can also consider it something cosmic. Okay. So when it becomes a part of that, free from this context, and her no is now free to become anything, then we find, after that, we find, these explorations that the no could be a knowing no, Knowing. The no could be something that has become new. It is no more just no, but it is something that is new. Okay. So what I felt was that once her no became a fragment, once her no was taken out of that context and that particular room, the walls, they were lost. The no became a fragment, and it had new meanings added to it. Some of the meanings, of course, we find given in the narrative. The author mentions them. But if we think deeper, and if we ask ourselves how many things this no could mean when it's taken out of that context, I think, if we just sit quietly and think about this, we will have so many more thoughts. I feel that I'm not finished with this particular part. I feel that I need to sit silently with that no, and many other kinds of meanings or interpretations of that no will come to me. So that is what I wanted to stress. This is a novel which you just cannot read, from sentence 1 to sentence 2 to sentence 3. That is not the way to read this novel at all. You will find nothing, will come into your grasp. And if you say that everything, okay, I understood everything, then you are losing everything, I would say. Okay, so it's not something that is in your grasp. And I find that there is play here. There is word play, and there is also the play of significations. And that is why it's, I was totally thrown off guard. I didn't know what to do. And I thought, maybe I would have to spend many, lonely moments, alone moments, if I want to really feel this novel. I want to feel this novel. I want to feel those words. And for that, I have to be away from my usual things. When I started reading it, and then I went to college and I was in a classroom, I felt I was distanced from my teaching. I felt that, whatever I was saying in the classroom would somehow take me away from those pages. And I didn't want to, distance myself from that experience, because I felt that, I would lose something, I would lose something. That was the feeling. So there is a pull, and I feel that there is a pull because of the fragmentary nature of the narrative, and, an invitation to the readers to understand that there are fragments, to understand why those fragments are there, to understand why, those fragments are not pieces to be put together into a whole. Then I would just like to, refer to what Arpita said about there being no name for the overseas son. And I found it really interesting the way she said that she was on a hunt for a name, a specific name. And I find the name not being there is also a kind of fragment. The name is not there. Like, we have Bade, right? We have that, character called Bade. And we just know something about Bade from the name. And the serious son, as Arpita was saying. So we have only one aspect given to us. We have only, a particular aspect thrust into our mind, because the narrative wants them there in a particular way, overtly. I'm not saying, that is everything there is to their personalities. No. Those names not being there also make the characters such that, we find holes, HOLES, we find holes, and we do not find a whole, WHOLE. Even in the characters, we find holes and we do not find a whole. And I believe that, saying that a character is such, saying a character that did not know how to smile, that was, just giving you the person in a box, giving you the person in a box. But you know that the box cannot just hold a person. Box cannot hold a person. And you will feel that the walls of the box must be porous, and something from that person will come out of the walls of that box, and you have to engage with that something. You have to engage with that something. And when it was said, I think it was in the 6th chapter, it was interesting. The door to Bade's home knows it must remain open no matter what, and there are no constraints on those who enter in terms of time of arrival, advance notice, or knocking before entry. Always free to be and free of charge. When I just came to this part, when I was reading this sentence, this door took me to Kafka's door. Kafka also had a door in the story Before the Law, which is actually part of a larger narrative, but that's a story we teach the students here in one of our books. It was prescribed, Before the Law. And this door took me to that door. And I would ask you to read the story if you haven't already. It's a must read, very interesting story. So here, this door is open for all, and you don't have to, prove a point, or you don't have to show your identity, or you don't have to present anything in order to be allowed. So this door is open for all, even for us. That is what I want to stress on. This door is open for all. But Kafka's door, that door was actually a door to the law, a door to justice. And it was meant only for one person. That particular door was meant only for one person, and that door didn't even open for that person for whom that door was meant. So that door didn't open even for one person, and the person, was ready to bribe the, one who was there, the doorkeeper. I remember the doorkeeper. That is how he was called. So whatever, he waited there for long. He waited there till his death. But the door did not open. We could not understand why, because nowadays it would be too easy to bribe a doorkeeper and enter the door. But somehow it was not possible for him. The door did not open. The door that was meant for him did not open. And after his death, the door had to be closed. The doorkeeper said that he had to close the door that was never opened. Okay. So when I read this particular line, immediately I got transferred into the world of Kafka. So if I just take this line out of that context of Holmes traveling, actually the context was Holmes traveling. I mean, home not being a structure of brick and mortar, but home being, those ties and traditions that we carry with ourselves, even when we leave a particular place, and when we even transcend borders. Okay. So when this context somehow vanished, I was transported into the world of Kafka, and there was a conversation going on in my mind between the door that opened for everyone and between the door that was meant for one but did not open even for that person. So there was this conversation going on. And I would like to just stop here. I would not say anything after this, because I wanted to just stress on why a fragment was all I could see in these pages. That's all. I don't want to say anything else. Just hand it over to Bhavya.
Ma'am, your discussion along with Arpita Didi's discussion has been so meaningful, but also serene, that the anxiety of now holding this huge book is now slowly fading away. So thank you for that, first of all. Most of it, I think, is most. It's going to be unfair of me to say that most of it is covered, because, as you said, that the book has even a smaller chunk of it has so much to offer, that it is going to be very pompous of us to even attempt to claim that we are touching a part of it well. Anyway, let's begin with what I had in mind. First of all, like you had mentioned, the cover. The cover is colorful, um, and it has these smaller pieces which are scattered throughout. They may be butterflies, they may be flowers, they may be just abstract pieces. Um, these might also be certain depictions of things which are under the water. And at the center of it, we have a small figure, um, possibly in a meditative state. And I am presuming that this figure is a female. And if I am presuming that this figure is a female, I would go ahead to also presume that this figure is our Ma. But what is more interesting is the posture in which she's sitting, and it has a very trance-like, meditative, samadhi-like state. And just beneath it, we have the title of the book as well, which is Tomb of Sand. It is not very hard to understand the making of the cover along with the title of the book. And I think just like in childhood, we used to play this game, Treasure Hunt, um, where a certain area was defined. We knew where the goodies were. We just had to use our presence of mind to be able to look at the goodies. The understanding of the chapters or the story is like a treasure hunt for me. So you think you are lost somewhere, and then suddenly, out of the blue, you find a connection. So I was just before the beginning of the session, I was reading the chapter on the statue of Gautam Buddha. And the statue of Gautam Buddha, which is actually slightly broken, and therefore it is told in the story that because it is slightly broken, it is kept inside a cupboard. So while all the other idols are worshipped every morning, and there is a huge paraphernalia of how worshipping is done in this household, that particular idol is not worshipped. So it always reminded me of a certain sense of how um, rituals are performed in households. And we see this in many Indian households, that if a idol of worship is slightly cracked or broken, or for any random reason, we try to either um, not worship it for some reason, I don't know why, or we just try to put it in the Ganges. That's what we do in Allahabad. So this piece has been kept away. This Gautam Buddha statue has been kept away. It's not worshipped, but it is worthy of reverence. And there is a very beautiful in which says that daily the ideal became more serene and refined. So there is a particular divinization of idols, divinization of gods, and divinization of everything we want to consider holy is done. Later on in the chapter, it is said that it was a statue which was brought home by Bade's father, and it was
Yes, go on.
so this piece of idol was brought in by Bade's father, and he found it also somewhere. He did not buy it, interestingly. He found it and he brought home, and it has kept in Ma's cupboard, and it has been called different things by different people. For example, the children call it the starving Buddha. The mother, the Ma, calls him the heart of stone, and the father calls it her heart of stone. So, from the very start, there is a sense of belongingness of the statue to the mother. It is lying in her cupboard, and there is a beautiful description of how an entity gains a trance-like state, like this ideal has, giving tracing us back to how Gautam Buddha actually got that state. So one is constantly meditating, so much so that they are not perturbed by changes in the weather, um, a lack of food, disease, and they get covered by a tomb of sand, quote unquote. And then one fine day, Gautam Buddha, while being covered in the tomb of sand, takes a dip in the river, and then there is a tomb of water. And then somebody makes him drink a gallon of milk, uh, and that is when he gives the glorious proclamation that it is not about the sand, it is not about water, it is not about the milk, it is about the middle path. It is the middle path, which I am assuming is the stoic like state which all of us are endeavoring to achieve, neither too happy, neither too angry, nor too sad. And it is called as the middle path. Very interestingly, it is not called as a stoic state, it is not called as a meditative state, it is not even called a samadhi, it is called as a middle path. And very interestingly, the figure of this female who I am now associating to Ma is placed right in the middle of the book as well. But it also leads me to question as to whose tomb of sand are we actually talking about, and what is this tomb of sand uh, that we can practically associate with in our lives, because we are not going to be covered by tomb of sands, we are not going to be covered by tombs of water. So what is this tomb of sand that the author is trying to make us question? I have not found the answer. I would love for me to not find the answer and just have the question itself. Um, that is not how I wanted to start the discussion, but let's begin with where I actually wanted to begin with, uh, which is the length of the book is large, but the chapters are very short. So while the readers might have a hesitation, because I had it, looking at the number of pages one has to go through, the chapters are not very long. And therefore, it is easier to invest into the book. There is a very simple idea of telling a tale: beginning, middle, and end. The simple Aristotelian model. This book breaks all of that, because at the first chapter itself we know that Ma has been shot. I'm very sorry for revealing it to the ones who have not read it. We know that she has been shot, so we know the end at the beginning. And then, like most other tales, we are started with the lineage of the family. It reminded me of Amitav Ghosh's Shadow Lines, and a lot of other stories which give you the disclaimer at the very start. It gives you the ending, and you have to find your understanding in the journey. That is one aspect. The book that we are reading here is in translation, it's in English, but then there are certain words which are not translated. There are a lot of Hindi muhavre. There are snippets of Gorakhpuri Sahab's Urdu poetry. There are Hindi words, and even the names of the characters are not translated. So, Beti is not daughter. Bahu is not called daughter-in-law. It is a very masterful job, perhaps intentionally by the translator, to know what to translate and what not to translate. And we often say that the meaning of any text is lost in translation, which is of course true, but meaning can also be retained if you really know how to get through the audience. For me, it is an absolute joy that I am reading an English text and then you stumble upon an Urdu poetry, or you stumble upon a Hindi muhavara, or you have characters which sound like uh, regular household names. It also reminds me that for most of us, I can speak of me, myself, I am not a survivor of partition. I've not seen partition firsthand. I have heard about partition from my grandparents and parents. I have read about partition. I have studied about partition, uh, but I have not seen it firsthand. Yet, this book does not feel distant. This is a story of partition, written at a time I have not seen, and still it feels very local. I think that is because a lot of time and energy has been invested in building the background of the family that we are talking about. It is also very interesting that names are not given to any character. So, a daughter in law is called as a Bahu, a daughter is called as a Beti, um, a serious son is a son, except for Sid, who has a name. Nobody has a name. And therefore, a daughter can be both you and me without having to see in partition. A daughter can also then be a daughter-in-law, and a reader can then associate itself either to the figure of the Beti or to the Bahu. They necessarily do not have to associate characters to names because things are very generic. And that is where the text becomes relatable, at least for me. The other thematic thing that I had noticed is the idea of material memory. I had first come across this word when I was reading Achal Mehlotra's Remnants of a Separation. For example, I have this pen gifted to me, and this pen is so dear to me that it will remind me of the person it has been gifted by. I have a piece of sari. I have apparel gifted to me by my grandmother, and that is why it will become dear to me. So when you attach memory to material possessions, and that is when things become more meaningful for us. That is the way I understand material memory to be. I would urge everybody to read Remnants of a Separation. I have found that book to be extremely delightful. Um, Here, there are umpteen references to material memory: doors, wall, the cane. And then there is an entire chapter which is dedicated after the farewell party of Bade, in which people are packing up things. People are packing up utensils, clothes, and they are not just packing, they are, of course, also quarreling and arguing. And this is not a household banter, in my opinion. This is a quarrel, this is a banter because there is a clash of material memory. So, what is important to me, what item is important to me in my head, might not be important to somebody else because they don't have the same memory. Similarly, what emotions somebody else have for a particular utensil or what they have dearly bought from their savings or from their money, I might not be able to associate to that. And therefore, an entire chapter has been dedicated to packing and repacking. And then an entire chapter has also been dedicated to how another kind of quarrel will unfold when things are not found. Because once you pack it, you will forget about it. And you will not find it, and that will eventually lead to material anxiety of not having the things with you, and therefore the anxiety of losing the material and subsequently the memory of it. I found this thing to be specifically hitting to me. I was teaching Hem Swaraj last semester to my students in a law department, and I was reading a Cambridge edition of Hind Swaraj. And the first line of the introduction said that the book is political, but the charm of the book is that it is written in a philosophical way. I did not understand the meaning of that statement when I was reading Hind Swaraj or while I was teaching it to my students. But today, when I am reading Tomb of Sand, I understand that despite the fact that it is talking about a very, very politically charged time, situation, era, there are very, very, very deep undertones of philosophy to it. And like ma'am had mentioned, it is a book for a lifetime. We can always go back to one chapter or another chapter and reread those portions. This is the first book which I had to start thrice because I was so scared of it. I started it once, I closed it because it was very challenging. I started it again. I went through the first section, the first part. I did not understand anything except for the basics of the story, and I was not content with my reading. Therefore, I made a third attempt, and this time I thought that I have read this book to myself vocally, out loud. I would want somebody else to read the book for me. So I put on an audio book of this book, and then I read the book simultaneously. And that is when I found the words to be making more meaning. There is a very small section on the significance of words. So when somebody else was reading out to me and I only had to follow it in the text, I understood that, oh, this is Saussure's theory that words have no meaning. I think this also reminds me to what ma'am said, that there is a particular insight that we can get through listening books, listening things, listening to people. Whenever somebody is picking up this book, I would urge them to read the book and to listen to the book. And I would be very delighted if we all have the privilege of somebody reading the book to us, because there are ways of listening the book. I might stress on certain words that are important to me, while somebody else might not, just like material memory. And let me just go through if I've missed out on something. Yes. The last thing that I want to talk about, and I would um, also want if we can have a discussion on it if time permits. There is a chapter on customs. It's the chapter number 25. It is the chapter of a sparrow and how the sparrow was very free spirited. Um, it was abundantly blessed and loved by the sun god. It had the power to spread the radiance of color red and light in a forest. And then came the hunters, and the hunters became symbolic of civilization and man. Guns became symbolic of weaponry and how we'd like to take charge of everything. Um, there is a very beautiful description of how things you do repeatedly become habit, transmuting to they becoming custom, then they transmuting to becoming fear. I wake up and I want to take a bath at 8 o'clock in the morning. I keep on doing it and doing it and doing it, and my body has naturalized itself to taking a bath at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, one fine day, I take a bath at 10 o'clock in the morning. Not just that my body feels unusual, my body and mind also feel scared. Uh, I think it is very, very important that we read this chapter number 25, very deeply, because the author has talked about fear in a very, very beautiful way. It's a fable, it's a story of a sparrow. And it is something that we can all teach in our classrooms. We can teach to our children as well. The charm of the book is in the fact that important issues, crucial situations, sensitive issues are most often than not treated with an element of humor or sarcasm. Like the serious one who does not have the ability to laugh. That makes us laugh for that matter. But I think with this chapter, we should not take the risk of just passing by it. I will just read one section from it, which I have found very meaningful. It's towards the end of the page. It reads, "So customs are not the invention of the Almighty, are they? In short, declared the orator, the Almighty crafted them one way, the sun warmed them in another, and the machismo then exploited them. Machismo is hidden in the layers of nearly every custom, and its repulsiveness makes it no less macho," explained the orator. Joyousness grew fearful, the dance collapsed, happiness faded, and from this mixture, the next generation was born, which does not know the reason for the mixture, but has already acquired its nature. So nature becomes habit, habit is custom. Thus ended the speech. Only the first time is there a spontaneous reaction. After that, it's all habit. Habit is just another word for repetition. Repetition becomes empty and meaningless, but it is also routine. If you hear a sound, then what do? Duck in because of fear. The sparrow of the red forest still continues this custom. They continue to duck. For this is now her culture, this is now her custom. These are the rules for her behavior now. And truly, we all we are all of us like those sparrows, are bowing, risking, fighting, loving, performing of rites and rituals, are all born out of habits and repetitions. So whatever we do and however we do, we are just enacting what has come down to us as a custom, as a habit, be it friendship, marriage, sarcasm, manners, bearings, speech, love life, rising, sitting, anxiety, sister in law, aunt, daughter in law, mother, elder son, his son. I think I would want to leave myself and everybody else with the thought that every reading session should serve some purpose to you. For me, it served the purpose of knowing that yes, it is important to question, but reminding myself to question everything to the very basic. And I have not found any better interpretation of customs and how it should be questioned than the one that I found in chapter 25. There are a lot more elements. There are sections on failed marriages. There are sections on corruption, government in government sectors. There are sections on how there are partitioning family dynamics, like the mother being overtly dependent upon the overseas son, the grandmother unintentionally being very dependent on Sid being very dependent on his friends and the outer world, not finding solace in the household stuff. And then there is another kind of world of the house helps. That is a topic for exploration, maybe for some other day and time, but their psychology, their ways of living, their customs, how they interact, how do their behaviors change at a social event versus when there is a family feud versus when nobody is at home. Like when somebody sees Ma becoming a wishing tree, it is one of the house helps who had seen this. There is a lot to explore. I think I would want to rest here. We can discuss more and more. But it was lovely to be here, and it was lovely to hear both of you.
Thank you, Bhavya. That was so, detailed and very insightful. And from what you said, we could feel that you have actually lived those pages. You have lived in those pages and you have lived those pages. And there was something interesting in what you said, that you do not have a direct connection with partition, but when you read it, you felt that it was something normal. It was not, something that was new, or something new was being told to you. And I feel that there is a very interesting term for it. It is a kind of blend between projection and retrospection. It's called retrojection. I think the word goes that way. You project something, but you actually project it backwards, which is again a kind of opposites coming together. But it happens that way. Why? Because of this section on habit that you said. It's a habit. When we read tales on partition, when we read narratives related to partition, we are also forming a habit of viewing partition in a certain way. Which is why when we have a work like this, our first tendency is to categorize, and our first tendency is to avoid that anxiety and say that yes, it is a partition novel. But I was struck by the comment on the cover page itself, the so-called partition novel. I mean, it's a comment again on the category of partition novel, the so-called partition novel. And if we go on discussing that, I think it would take us a really long time, and we will refer to some of the partition stories we have read. But this is what I found interesting, and but when I was talking of fragments, there is this tendency in society to either be totally dependent on the past and say that if we do not connect the present to the past and find a continuity, then there is no hope for the future. There is that kind of a thinking. Then there is another kind of a thinking which does not want any connection whatsoever. It takes a work as it is, and it would like the work to remain that way, not to be connected to any other work, or anything, even particular portions of that work, if they are taken out of context, then they give us different insights which we would like to welcome, actually. Which is why reading this particular work, I mean, it will always remain an unfinished tale. I feel it will remain unfinished, and no matter how many sessions we have on this work, we will have that sense of something being unsaid, and something being missed. And as you said, this is what it gives us that feeling of excitement about engaging with the lines in the first place. So it was really nice listening to both of you, and I would like to ask Arpita if she wants to make some closing remark. Otherwise, we'll wind up. It's already
I would
almost
just
8:30.
like to say one thing related to what both you and Bhavya have said, that the so-called partition novel, yeah, definitely. And when Bhavya said that I mean, it's not that way a traditional, a format of partition novel, and she didn't find it anyway, even though she is not a witness of the partition of 1947, yet she didn't find herself detached or dissociated from the descriptions that have been provided by the novel. Uh, Taking a link with this, what she has found in the novel Tomb of Sand, I would like to say that eminent poet and lyricist Gulzar Sahab He has written a book which is called Footprints on the Land, on the Border. And there he has written a poem, Toba Texin. I mean, his interpretation, his conversation with Toba Texin, and there he mentioned at one point that partition is not over, it is a continuing process. We are yet to see some sort of, witness some sort of partition. And so certain partitions are coming. Some we are facing, some we have already faced, and there are yet some sort of partitions which are yet to be witnessed. So I feel that when we say that it's a so-called partition novel, or when we say it's a partition novel, we don't restrict ourselves to that partition or the cultural memory of, partition of 1947, or the when we talk about the partition, the Holocaust, for example. So when we talk about partition in this novel, we can associate, the future generation also can associate with the concept of partition, because see, when the first generation would talk about who witnessed partition, they narrate the incidents of partition from their own experience, as if they are visualizing it, or it's a flashback. But their next generation, for example, my grandparents witnessed partition. Now, they spoke about it in a different manner. When they transmitted this experience to their children, like my parents, they haven't seen the partition, but they have witnessed the effects of partition. Okay, that partition of 1947. So when they are narrating the partition concept of partition to me, or like our generation was the third generation, so we get a translated version of partition, which the way my parents have understood. And now when we talk about partition, we talk about partition based on what we can see in our surroundings, in our society, in the contemporary world. The fragmented one, or the like intra or micro and micro level. So partition, as it's not only a cultural memory, partition based, like what Gunza Sahab has said, it's an ongoing process, and certain partitions have yet to arrive. Partition is not a topic which is, some people say it's a very thoroughly discussed topic. Already we have discussed a lot about partition. We have often come across this statement. But I would always say partition was, is, and will always remain a contemporary topic to that generation, because it is an ongoing process, not only geographically, but it's in different section of the society. And perhaps, when you are talking about partition, I end up with this, that we say that Kali Yug has arrived, and after that a new Kalki avatar will come to, help us to get a new kind of just society. So perhaps with this sort of partition and fragments, we will end up being the minusculest part, and from there itself perhaps the new, from no to no, that NO to KNOW part will reappear, and we will be able to re-establish a term in the sense that it will be a term of knowledge, and it will be a society full of inclusion and justice. So I feel that in that way, this is a partition novel, and ever, how to say, its relevance will never fade. So that's all from my side. So yeah, Shatarupa. So you wind up the session, I guess.
So with this, I must say that now there are words all around me. Already I had so many words and I felt there was so much to do with those words. Now with your words, added to it and floating around me, I have so much more to do, I feel. And I'm sure our viewers would also have a lot to think tonight, and that is our purpose. I'm very fond of uh, these words which were given to us when we were students in the Department of English. Our teachers used to tell us, think about it. So that thinking will never end. And that is the purpose of this book club. And I'm really happy with the way our journey has begun. And I would like to thank Bhavya and Arpita for coming together to give a shape to this book club. And I would also thank our viewers for being with us patiently till the end. And I would like to ask you to join us for the next part of the discussion on Tomb of Sand, part 2 of the novel on 22nd August. Till then, keep thinking, keep reading, and thank you. Be merry. Good night. Thank you.
Night. Bye bye.